If I've not met you, I'm Karen Valencic. I'm the author of Spiral Impact, The Power to Get It Done with Grace. And this live stream is about an article I published yesterday, and it's called um, Hallucinations in Leadership. And I don't know if you've read the article or not, but it was inspired by a recent visit I had with my father over Christmas. And, he has macular degeneration. And I did not know this, but when you begin to lose vision, lose your sight, the brain doesn't just go dark. The brain starts inventing things. And that comes in the form of hallucinations. So you're blind and your brain makes up things that aren't really there. Now, so it becomes an inventor of all kinds of things that might even seem irrelated, because he'll see people, he'll see machinery, he'll see buildings or just shapes, and they don't make a lot of sense to him. But I was thinking how relevant that is as leaders in our world today, and how we have blind spots. And I'm going to go into these in a little bit more depth here as I go along, but those blind spots that we have when we know somebody really well, or we think we know somebody really well, when we're just getting surface information, or when we are just meeting somebody, and we have blind spots based upon a variety of things, um, that we approach those things through. So we often will make up our own illusions or delusions or hallucinations about what those things are. And so in my work is grounded in the martial arts specifically of Aikido. And we have a concept we call soft eyes. And I'd like to just start out using that concept of soft eyes as a learning tool. And the reason we talk about soft eyes is if I'm in a martial art situation and I have all my focus on my opponent, what happens is, for one, I usually get tense and I don't see what else is going on around me. So soft eyes versus hard eyes. So soft eyes are going to be more relaxed. The peripheral vision will be wider. You'll be more aware of what might be behind you. So it's a much safer way to be. And if you've got my book or read my book on page 96, I go into that, engaging soft eyes. And again, when our eyes are too focused on only one intent, hard eyes, you really miss a lot. So, and that's becomes really obvious when you're on the martial arts thing. You miss things because something could be coming at you in a different direction. But it's also true if you're so intent, maybe on getting to work on time, that you're just single focused. You could run through some red lights or stop signs or whatever because you're not paying attention to what's going on. And I think that's really important in our everyday life. Now, if I'm working on some kind of equation or art or something, great to have that focus. But generally speaking, in the rest of our world, we want to have soft eyes. And when it comes to our blind spots, I think that is in particularly true. So let's let me also share with you, my book is called Spiral Impact. And this is all grounded in that martial arts, but it's for everyday life. And I want you to just think, as we go through these three examples, think about a spiral. And this is kind of a 30,000-foot view of how I use that concept, and it's applicable for everything. Keep in mind, spirals are one of the most powerful geometries in the universe. And it really, if you hook into that yourself, it's your true power, which is a whole nother thing I can talk about. But think about this: that there's three components to a spiral. You got the center, which is the calm eye in that storm, and that is really what brings things in. What forms the spiral has to have that calm space in the middle, and that's where the strength of the spiral comes from. And it equivalates to us being calm and with soft eyes. Now, the spiral also has this rotational aspect to it, which for me is around being aware of looking at different ways of seeing things. So if you've got, you've got an issue in the middle. It's like, how do you go around and look at that issue from a lot of different perspectives? And so there you come, you take off the blinders and you can see more of what's happening. And then the other component is the direction the spiral is going. And I call that intention. So there's the X, Y, and Z if you're a math person, but you've got the center, you've got the rotation, and you've got it going in a direction. Because a lot of times people will say it's spiraling out of control or it's spiraling down the drain. And that's because spirals are powerful, but that directional piece will get you pointing your spiral in the direction that you want. Okay, so as a leader, how do we apply that to our blind spots? And so let's start out with those very familiar relationships that we have. And it could be somebody that you don't know for all that long, but you've had a relationship, or somebody that you've known for years and years. And what I find is that um, oftentimes, the more familiar we are, the less we can really see that person. And also, I don't know if you've experienced this. I know I have, where I met somebody when they were really young, maybe even a child, and then I see them later in life, and they're this full grown adult, and and that's really fun. But it's kind of hard to see past the fact that this is the person I used to know, and now they're this grown up human being. But this happens too when we have someone that we work with, and and perhaps we just, maybe they're doing a lot of their own personal development and we don't see it. We don't see it because we hold them back to our early experience. We have those blind spots where we hold them we hold them with a lot of times what our first impression is. We also, I know, with people that I'm really close to, I catch myself because sometimes I believe that they think the same way I do. And that's really dangerous to think that, because people do change, people do grow, and people do change perspective. So, what do you do about that? So, now if you're a leader, I think let's apply those three spiral concepts to it. So the one thing is, you want to make sure that those relationships, people are comfortable, psychologically safe to be able to approach you. And that concept of the calm eye in the storm is a is really a great tool to be able to come to yourself, so that when you're comfortable with yourself, other people are more comfortable with you as well. So people respond to center as something that they can feel trust in. So the reason I bring that up is because the other part of it is, you want to engage people you've known for a long time with open-ended questions. What is it that you're really interested in learning or exploring this coming year? Um, what did you learn from that last project that you worked on? What was important there? What would you do in terms of carrying something forth? So those are all questions of inquiry that you can begin to learn about with somebody that you know well already. And you might even say, how did you see this instance that happened? What did you take away from that? I'm really kind of curious. And then be in that calm space so they feel safe, particularly if you are in an authority position, so they feel safe that they can be honest with you. And those are really important things, is to ask those questions. And of course, you got your center, and then you're going to be asking a lot of questions so you can see all aspects of what they're looking at or how they're experiencing something. And then, being intentional as a leader. Are you a leader that is a command and control? Or are you a leader that's really wanting to develop your people so that they can be showing up and doing the best for whatever it is your projects are? So that's, how do you get past those blind spots with a familiar person? That's a real key there. So the second thing I mentioned is when we just have surface information. And boy, in this day and age, that is so easy to see something and see a title or a headline or someone's conclusions over a big study, and you don't dig deeper. And so the blind spot is what I call confirmation bias. So we will see whatever that is on the surface as a way to confirm what we already believe. And that could be something that's positive that we believe in, or it could be something that's negative that we have a rub against. So either way, that confirmation bias really creates a blind spot for learning more about what the situation is. And that is certainly true in this day and age when there's so much going on and so many opinions out there. The world has as many opinions being expressed as there are microphones, it seems. So, how do you take that information and you dig deeper with it? And that again is through critical thinking, which is looking at that from all different directions. Another example I have in my book is so often, we'll hear something. And for example, I'm just going to use the example I use in my book, which is you hear someone say, that person's a bully. Now, I hear that on the surface, and I make my own conclusions based upon my own experience. And I'm thinking that's a person that must be really hurting people intentionally. But if I catch myself, because again, making my own assumptions, that's my blind spot. But if I ask the next question, which is, well, how do you experience that? Then I learn, well, this person is really maybe a perfectionist. They want things done a certain way. And they're not really technically a bully, but that person is feeling that way about what's happening. And so those are really two distinctly different things. And if I don't, as a leader, ask more of those questions, then I get that blind spot of that now I'm labeling another person based upon a surface level piece of information. And that happens so much, I think, in our politics these days too, is we hear something and we respond based upon what our position is, what our belief is, where I think that the world is gray. It's not really black and white. And just because a person sees something this way doesn't mean they see everything else the same way. And it's always about exploring those nuances. My last article I wrote back in December, which you can find in my my series here on Substack, was about how nuance is so wonderful. And I use the example of Grater's bourbon ice cream, which is so divine. But if I just take that in, I don't really get the amazing quality of it because I haven't let it sit in my mouth and melt and really explore those flavors. And the same thing with an idea or a person when I can really be with it and explore the nuances of that person or that situation, then I learn something that's more total and I can be more effective as a leader. The other thing I want to say about this surface level thing is, a lot of times I associate that with making decisions that are based upon the short term. So we have some surface information. We make a decision because um, that seems like the right thing. But as an engineer, many years ago, my first career, I really learned that you really got to step back and think about what are the unintended consequences of making this decision? What are other things that may happen? And really explore that and be well informed. Otherwise, you know, you get really hit with that. And that's another blind spot that you can plan on. So we used to do a thing we'd call design failure mode analysis, which was we'd look at every dimension on our product and we'd think, well, what happens if that fails? And so that's also a great way to get beyond the surface of a decision that seems good and really explore something in its depths so you know what you're getting into. So often we take that plunge and sometimes we can get back out of it easily, but a lot of times we can't. And I know I've taught my daughters that there's a saying that's very true. It's very easy to get into something, but it's much more difficult to get out of something. Does that hold true for you? Okay, so the last thing on that list is when you meet somebody new. You meet somebody new, and we're going to be having, if not already, 6 generations in the workplace. And each of those generations can have a generalization of their attributes. I really encourage people not to label people based upon their generation, their age, the way they're dressed necessarily, because you can have billionaires walking around in very, very, very casual clothing, um, that can sway a lot of influence. And if you just judge them, that snap judgment, you miss out. Again, those things can blind us to really asking more questions. And again, those 3 attributes of that spiral, that being centered, that soft eyes. We get those soft eyes so we can see more of what's around here. Because I'm not saying just blindly accept everything, but I'm saying explore it, see everything that's around it, and that center does that for you. The other thing is then again that that rotation, which is looking at something from all those different angles. Last night I have a house guest right now, and it was really fun. Last night, this room that I sit in it's my living room. And a lot of times I have a sofa that's in the middle of the living room, and I have everything on coasters. So I move things around a lot because I teach in here as well. And I was teaching Tuesday night, and I moved the sofa away, and I moved everything out of the way. So there's this great big space. And my house guest was sitting on the sofa on the far end of the living room, and he said, "Well, where did that sofa go?" And it was so interesting because he was looking at this room from a different angle, and he noticed something was different, and actually he was sitting on the sofa, which was kind of funny, and then he noticed there's this really unusual lamp over here, and so seeing things from different angles will always give you more information and different perspective. And that's why it's really great to kind of keep changing things up in your life, whether it's, the side of the bed you get out of, the hand that you brush your teeth, but thinking about how do I increase that perspective I have? And of course, what's your intention around all of that? My intention is I want to be able to see things in their completeness so that I can have an intelligent conversation about it. So just, if there are any questions, let me know. I'm not seeing them here, but it doesn't mean that they're not necessarily here because I've not done this before. So, but I want to just kind of recap. So those blind spots that we have, we can, instead of having hallucinations that we're making up, remember, and I'll just say, remember to spiral it. Use those soft eyes. It's got that center that really puts you in a position to see more clearly with those soft eyes. And then that idea of the rotation where you look at something from different angles. And then, of course, the direction. What is your intention around all of that? So that's my message for you, for anyone today. I will be saving this video and reposting it. So thank you for being here. And again, if you have any questions or comments, and I guess I don't know if I'm not seeing anything or if there's just no questions because I've been so clear. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you're subscribed and will join me another time. Thanks so much. Bye bye.